I'll never forget the morning I stepped out onto my porch, coffee still hot in my hand, and saw what looked like a tornado had touched down right on my property line. Splintered boards everywhere, fresh hoofprints tracking off into the horizon, and my fence, the one I'd built myself, ripped apart like a cheap toothpick. You want to talk about a rude awakening? Try realizing 200 head of bison are suddenly on the loose, and the only thing between you and 1,000 acres of chaos is a busted post and a pile of anger boiling in your gut. And before you ask, no, it wasn't a storm, it wasn't coyotes, and it sure as hell wasn't an accident. It was sabotage, plain and simple. Courtesy of Karen, our self-appointed queen of the HOA, clipboard in one hand, cell phone in the other, always ready to explain why your way of living just isn't up to community standards. Yeah, that happened. If she wanted a war, she just lit the fuse and I was done playing nice. But let me back up a sec. Paint you a picture of this life out here. My ranch, it's not some patch of hobby land on the edge of a subdivision. We're talking generations of blood and sweat, a line of mountains cutting the sky, pasture rolling as far as you can see, and fences that don't just keep the bison in. They tell the world where my family's story begins and ends. My fence. It's more than wood and wire. It's years of sunrise labor, busted knuckles, afternoons hammering through heat and cold, every nail driven in by me and my old man. And every inch of it says this land is mine. Thing is, that doesn't mean much to the HOA. See, technically they're supposed to manage the cul-de-sacs a mile down the road, all those copy-paste houses and lawns trimmed so short it looks like somebody's running a golf course. My ranch. My deed goes back before their bylaws even existed, but none of that matters to Karen. She sees my property as some kind of eyesore that ruins her vision. You ever meet someone who thinks the world would be perfect if only everyone listened to them? That's her late 40s hair, so blonde it practically glows under her visor, always slowing her Lexus at my front gate, taking notes, snapping photos, mumbling about zoning violations. Once she actually told me, "You really ought to join the association, or this whole area is just going to look unsightly." Unsightly, that's her word for my life's work. At first I ignored it. Folks like that live for the drama, feed them silence, maybe they go away. Not Karen. She doubled down. Letters started showing up in my mailbox, neat as a pin, HOA letterhead, and all failure to comply with landscaping standards may result in fines. Landscaping standards. On a cattle ranch, I'd toss them in the fire pit. Keep stacking hay, but then the board members started rolling up city boys in loafers, sweating through their polo shirts, trying to sell me on property values. Like I give a damn if some McMansion a mile away appraises higher because my grass is shorter. But the real fireworks, those were saved for the HOA meetings. I walked into one of their so-called community gatherings, folding chairs, fake stone fireplace. Karen presiding like a small-town dictator. My ranch isn't part of your HOA, I told the room, and it never will be. Whispers, some nods, a few dirty looks. But Karen just tapped her clipboard and said, "We'll see about that." That's when the games really started. More letters, more violations, threats of fines. I never paid county complaints about my livestock endangering public safety. The sheriff stopped by, shook his head, said, "Sorry, man, this is a waste of time." Karen, she just saw it as a challenge. Let me tell you, when someone like that decides you're their project, life gets creative. Notices tacked to my gate about uniform fence color, as if mud, sun, and bison have ever been uniform a day in their lives. Piles of gravel mysteriously dumped across my access road. Even a lawsuit. Thread a thick envelope full of legalese demanding I tear down a barn that had stood here 20 years before their subdivision even existed. At first I laughed. Then I started to feel it, the pressure, the sense that maybe, just maybe, she'd find a way to grind me down. The breaking point came one spring night, dogs barking low and mean, the kind of sound that says, "This ain't a raccoon." I grab a flashlight, Boots head out, and there it is, my fence gutted in long, clean cuts, the wood-fresh bison already halfway to the next county. No coyote did this. This was deliberate. And wouldn't you know it, tire tracks in the dirt, a soggy HOA pamphlet stuck in the mud. She wasn't even trying to hide it. You know what's worse than anger? Humiliation. Neighbors driving by slow, some shaking their heads, others pretending not to notice. The whispers start, "He can't control his herd, can't even keep a fence standing." Karen spreading it, stoking the rumor mill. She wanted me broken a punchline at the feed store, and for a minute I felt it working. But I've never been one to tuck tail and run. So I showed up at the next HOA meeting, Boots still dirty, hat pulled low, and there she was holding court. As you can all see, the rancher is incapable of keeping order. His livestock are a threat. We need stricter enforcement. She smiles at me, dares me to say a word. And I do. Maybe if someone hadn't cut my fence, we wouldn't have a problem. Room goes quiet then, Karen cool as ever. Maybe if you played by the rules, fences wouldn't be your problem. That's when I knew she wanted a fight, public and messy. So I gave her one, just not the kind she expected. Here's where the twist comes in. See, people like Karen, they're always thinking in terms of paperwork, meetings, control. But out here, the land, the animals, they don't care about bylaws. I started thinking what would happen if the bison got a little too close to her bubble. And the more I pictured it, the funnier it seemed at first. Then it started to feel right. Karen weaponized rules. I'd weaponized nature. So I planned. Started feeding the herd near the back gate. Reinforced some hinges, waited for the next HOA board meeting. Thursday night, all the bigwigs gathered in their beige office, sign out front about building community together. I watched the lights flicker on, heard their laughter across the field. Karen's voice carrying above the rest. I rested my hand on the latch, 200 bison restless behind me. "Showtime, boys," I whispered and let the gate swing wide. There are few sounds in this world like a herd of bison on the move. It's like thunder wrapped in muscle and dust. They tore through the lot, alarms blaring, plastic flower beds exploding, Karen's clipboard flying as she shrieked for someone to call animal control. Through the glass, I saw pure panic, board members scrambling chairs, knocked over, Karen stumbling backward, heels snapping, face wild. For once, she wasn't in control. The bison circled, shattered a window, trampled the manicured landscaping, all that community pride flattened under hooves. 10 minutes of chaos. Then they drifted back home, leaving behind a field of wreckage and a room full of trembling HOA officers. Next day, the story was everywhere. HOA office stormed by bison news vans out front. Karen blaming me on camera, waving her ruined clipboard like a surrender flag. "He's a menace," she screeched, "endangering families." But the tide had turned. Reporters started asking about the fence. Wasn't it cut before the incident? Isn't the rancher outside your jurisdiction? Karen couldn't answer. Her story fell apart. Neighbors talked, fence was fine till someone cut it. The sheriff came by, hat in hand. "You're in the clear. DA's not touching it. Too many folks saw who really started this. That's how it goes. Out here, truth moves slow, but when it lands, it sticks." Karen tried to hold on emergency meetings bills for bison damages, threats, but the community turned. Petitions, lawyers, board members resigning. Finally, the county started sniffing around misuse of funds, intimidation, tampering with property. Karen's name led every document, her empire crumbling by the hour. And here's the kicker, final twist, if you want to call it that. Turns out buried in the county records, the land her precious HOA office sits on belongs to my family, always has. I walked into the office with the deed in hand, told her and the board, "You've got 30 days to pack up." Karen sputtered, called it a trick, but the clerk had stamped it herself, 130 years of ownership. That was the end. 1 month later, they hauled out the last box, and Karen, standing in the doorway, visor crooked, looked at me and hissed, "You'll regret this." I just smiled. You reap what you sow. Now that office sits empty, weeds growing where her flower beds used to be. The HOA dissolved, Karen's reign broken. My fence stands stronger than ever, the herd grazing quiet, the land finally at peace. Looking back, it was never just about the bison or the fence or even Karen herself. It was about standing your ground when someone tries to take what's yours. About remembering that real strength isn't in bylaws or meetings, but in grit, patience, and knowing when to push back. So let me ask you, where are you watching from? Ever had a run-in with your own Karen or stood your ground when it mattered? Drop a comment below, share your story. And if you stuck around till now, hit that subscribe button, because trust me, this isn't the last time an HOA will learn what happens when you mess with the wrong rancher.